Good morning, students. I, Mrs. Nehal Bankhedi, welcome you all for our video lecture. Today, we are going to study second lesson of geography, that is the sun, the moon and the earth. Now, students, in your lower standard, many times you have studied about the sun, moon and the earth. But today we are going to collect more information about all of them. So let's start with our lesson. Here is the celestial object that we observe in the sky, the sun. The sun is heart of our solar system. As we know, heart has very important function in our body. Similarly, for solar system to work smoothly, sun is very important. It is more than 100 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. It holds 99.8% of the solar system's mass. The sun is roughly 109 times the diameter of the earth. It means about 1 million earth could fit inside the sun. It is by far the most important source of energy for life on earth. The earth. Earth is our home. It is third planet from the sun. It is the only planet known to have life on it. Earth is the fifth largest planet in the solar system. Earth's gravity interacts with other objects in space, especially between the sun and the moon. The moon. The moon is an astronomical body orbiting the earth as its only natural satellite. It is the fifth largest satellite in the solar system. So students, in this lesson, let's learn in detail about motions and phases of the moon. Now let us study about the motions of the moon. There are two types of motions, axial motion and orbital motion of the moon. Now students, let us see what is axial motion. In previous lesson, we have studied that the earth rotates around itself in similar manner. The moon also rotates around itself. Earth takes 24 hours to rotate around itself, whereas moon takes 29.5 days to rotate around itself. So here the motion of the moon around its own axis is called its axial motion. Now let us study about orbital motion. The moon, while rotating around itself, revolves around the earth. It is called its orbital motion. As you all know, earth takes 365 day to revolve around the sun, whereas the moon takes 29.5 days to revolve around the earth. So dear students, always remember, the moon, while rotating around itself, revolves around the earth and the earth revolves around the sun. As a result, though the moon does not revolve around the sun, indirectly it makes revolution around the sun. the time it takes to make one revolution around the earth and one rotation around itself is the same. That is why we constantly see one and the same side of the moon. The moon's orbit of the revolution is also elliptical as that of the earth. It means that the moon revolves around the earth in an oval shaped path as you can see in the picture. Hence, the distance of the moon from the earth is not the same everywhere along its orbit while revolving. Now in the picture you can see, while revolving around the earth, the moon comes closer to the earth. It is said to be perigee position. The distance between the earth and the moon during perigee position is about 3,56,000 kilometers. While revolving, the moon is farthest from the earth. It is said to be in apogee position, and the distance between the earth and the moon in apogee position is about 4,07,000 kilometers. Students, when the moon is in perigee position, it is closer to the earth, and thus at the time of full moon, it appears to be more brighter and larger in size, which is also known as supermoon. Whereas, on the other hand, when the moon is in the apogee position, it is farthest from the earth and thus appears to be smaller in size, and we can experience a micromoon. Now let us understand about phases of the moon. The moon has something which we call phases, which means it appears to change every night. In order to understand why this happens, we have to discuss about how the moon and the earth moves together in the space. As we discussed earlier, the moon orbits around the earth much like the earth orbits around the sun. However, the earth takes 365 days to complete one revolution around the sun, that is 1 year. The moon completes its revolution in 29.5 days or about in 1 month. Students, most of the time we see brighter moon in the sky, but it does not have light of its own. It looks brighter because of the light of sun which gets in and bounces out. Means, in simple words, the moon is brighter because of the reflection of sunlight. Let's discuss about the waxing and waning phases of the moon. Waxing phases of the moon. The cycle of the lunar phases begins with the new moon. The new moon occurs when the moon and the sun are on the same side of earth. The moon is between the sun and the earth and therefore lost in the glare of the sun. We see the side which is not lit, so the moon appears dark to us. New moon is the only time in lunar cycle when the solar eclipse can happen, because it is the only time when the moon is between the sun and the earth. Second phase is waxing crescent phase. After few days, once the moon moves in its orbit, we can begin to see some same side of the moon from the earth. Now what we can see is just a thin side of the moon called a crescent. We call it a waxing crescent because waxing means growing. The crescent moon will grow a little bit thicker every night until it reaches the next phase, first quarter. So here the third phase is the first quarter. The first quarter moon is sometimes also called as the half moon because it appears to us that the half of the moon is illuminated, but it's called first quarter because the moon is 1/4 way of its cycle. The quarter is when the moon has completed 1/4 of an orbit around the earth. 1/4 of a full circle, that is 90 degrees away from the sun. As the days passes, the moon continues to grow. Soon it brings its next phase, waxing gibbous. Gibbous means the illuminated part of the moon which is greater than a semicircle and less than a circle. A waxing gibbous moon comes between first quarter moon and full moon. It appears more than half illuminated but less than full. And again, we call it a waxing because it grows thicker every night until it reaches to its next phase, the full moon. So we have studied about the waxing phases of the moon. Now let us move towards the waning phases of the moon. The full moon is the biggest, brightest and the easiest phase of the moon to see. The moon rises when the sun sets and we can easily observe the full moon. The full moon is when the earth is between the sun and the moon. Students, if you are outside and if the sky is clear, it is very hard to miss the full moon. When there is a full moon, the moon is halfway through its orbit around the earth and it is the opposite side of the earth from the sun. During the full moon, it is the only time when the lunar eclipse can occur because that is the only time that the earth's shadow falls on the moon. So next waning phase is waning gibbous. So as the moon continues its path, it appears to shrink again as we begin to see more and more of its dark side. Few days after the full moon, the moon will gibbous again, but this time it is a waning gibbous. Waning means shrinking or becoming smaller. The next phase is third quarter. The moon's next phase is another half moon. It is called third quarter or the final quarter because the moon is third quarter of the way through its orbit. The last waning phase is waning crescent. Waning crescent phase is the last visible slice before a new moon. Soon the half moon shrinks into the waning crescent, which will continue to shrink night after night until it vanishes or disappears completely into the next new moon. The moon looks big and bright and beautiful and even different in every night, but it also repeats the same cycle over and again. The moon is one of the best objects to observe in sky. So students, next time when you will see the moon in the sky, try to identify which phase of the moon you are observing and also try to figure out which can be the next phase. Now students, let's discuss the diagram which shows waxing and waning phases of the moon. In the diagram, students, you can see sun light is coming in from the right. The earth is at the center of the diagram. The moon is shown at its 8 different stages during its revolution around the earth. The moon phase is shown alongside the image. The dotted line from the earth to the moon represents our line of sight when looking at the moon. The outer circular part of the image shows different stages of waxing and waning phases of the moon. The inner circular part shows that we constantly see one and the same side of the moon. We see the phases of the moon in the sky from the earth. They are the illuminated portion of the moon. They become visible due to the sunlight reflecting from the moon. While revolving around the earth, the moon is on the opposite side of the sun on a full moon day. Whereas on the new moon day, it is positioned between the sun and the earth. On the first and the third quarter days, the moon, the earth and the sun makes an angle of 90 degrees. At these positions, we see half the portion of illuminated moon. Hence in the sky, it appears semicircular in shape. So students, now let's recap our lesson. So today we studied about the moon. The moon rotates around itself. It is called axial motion of the moon. The moon, while rotating around its axis, also revolves around the earth. It is called orbital motion of the moon. The moon waxes or increases from the new moon to the full moon is called waxing phase of the moon. The moon vanishes or decreases from the full moon to the new moon is called waning phase of the moon. So students, with this we have ended the first part of lesson. The next part of the lesson we will continue in next video. Thank you.